On a quiet evening in late autumn, Ethan walked into his family's dining room carrying a secret that had been burning a hole in his chest for months. He took his seat, watching the people around him laugh, unaware that everything they believed about this family was about to collapse. Across the table, Ariana swayed slightly from too many glasses of wine, her smile brittle, her eyes restless. Ethan's father sat stiffly, pretending not to notice her growing panic. Ethan already knew why. He had spent months collecting evidence of their affair, messages, bank transfers, hidden meetings, all of it recorded and ready. But he hadn't come to expose them impulsively. He had come because tonight, in front of everyone, the truth would finally spill out. And once it did, nothing in this family would ever return to the way it was. Ariana's laughter cracked in the middle like a glass too thin to hold its own weight. Everyone at the table turned toward her, unsure whether she was amused or unraveling. Ethan kept his gaze steady, waiting, because he knew exactly which of the two it was. Ariana lifted her wine glass again, her hand trembling just slightly, enough for him to notice but not enough for anyone else to question. Then she set the glass down too hard, the clink echoing in the tense air. She stared directly at Ethan, her expression sliding into something reckless and raw. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, in a voice thick with alcohol and emotion, Ariana murmured that there was something she needed to confess. His mother leaned forward, concerned. His father froze, fork halfway to his mouth. Ariana swallowed hard, her eyes darting between them as though daring herself to continue. She said she hadn't been honest about her commitment to Ethan. She said she'd made mistakes. She said she'd been involved with someone else. A hush fell over the room so suddenly that even the candles seemed to flicker in response. Ethan's mother asked who it was, her voice thin and trembling. Ariana's eyes slid to Ethan's father. And that was enough. His mother gasped, grabbing the edge of the table for support. Ethan watched the horror spread across her face, watched his father's jaw clench as the truth finally crashed into the open. But Ethan didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small flash drive, letting it drop onto his empty plate with a sharp metallic ping. Everyone jumped slightly at the sound. His father's face drained of color. Ethan said he had known about the affair for months. He said he had evidence, videos, photos, messages, phone logs, financial trails. He said he had been collecting it quietly, piece by piece, while they both assumed he was clueless. Ariana blinked rapidly, the confidence she tried to muster seconds earlier crumbling like old plaster. She insisted it was what Ethan thought. She insisted things were complicated. She insisted she'd been manipulated. But Ethan shook his head, calm and cold. He told her he already knew about the hidden transfers. The gifts. The nights she'd claimed to be working late. He even knew about the fabricated pregnancy scare she had tried to use to trap him. His father tried to intervene, stuttering as he attempted to shift the blame entirely onto Ariana, painting himself as a victim of seduction and manipulation. But Ethan had anticipated that too. He pulled out printed screenshots, placing them in a neat stack in the center of the table. Each page revealed another lie, another betrayal, another piece of undeniable truth. The room erupted into overlapping voices, accusations, denials, gasps, sobs, until Ethan slammed his hand down, silencing everyone. He said the truth was no longer up for debate. He said tonight wasn't about excuses. Tonight was about exposing what they had chosen to do behind everyone's back. Ariana began crying, reaching toward Ethan, begging him not to ruin her life. But Ethan didn't move. He simply looked at her, then at his father, and said that they had ruined their own lives long before this dinner ever began. Ariana's tears came fast, but they weren't the quiet, remorseful kind. They were frantic, messy, laced with panic as she reached for Ethan again. She begged him to listen, to understand, to forgive her because she had been confused and pressured and emotionally vulnerable. Her voice cracked, but there was something hollow behind it, something rehearsed. Ethan didn't move. He watched her with a calmness that only made her more desperate. She switched tactics instantly. She accused him of neglecting her, of making her feel unwanted, of pushing her into the arms of someone who gave her attention. Ethan's mother let out a choked cry, horrified that Ariana would dare blame her son. His father tried to speak, but Ariana cut him off, saying he had promised her a future, promised her security, promised her things she never got from Ethan. That made Ethan laugh softly. He asked her if security was what she called the money she had been receiving every month. Ariana flinched, and the room tightened like a held breath. Then she snapped. She pointed at Ethan, her voice rising, saying he had no right to ambush her, no right to expose her like this. She said she would destroy him if he didn't stop. Ethan's expression didn't change. His father finally shouted at Ariana to be quiet, to stop making things worse. But the panic in his voice gave him away. He was terrified. He tried to claim Ariana had exaggerated their relationship, that he had been weak, that he was trying to end things. Ariana spun toward him, furious, her tears vanishing in an instant. She accused him of lying, of promising her stability, of saying he would leave his wife if she played along and stayed patient. The table erupted again, but Ethan calmly raised another sheet of paper. Bank transfers. Dates. Amounts. His father fell silent. Ariana collapsed back into her chair, shaking her head violently. Then she tried a softer approach. She said she loved Ethan, that the affair meant nothing, that she had been manipulated, that she had only stayed with his father because she was scared. Ethan asked why, if she loved him, she had planned to trap him with a fake pregnancy. Ariana's face twisted, then hardened. She hissed that she had done what she needed to survive. His father muttered something about her being unstable, trying to distance himself now that everything was falling apart. Ariana spun on him again, calling him a coward, accusing him of using her, of throwing her away now that they'd been caught. She shouted that he wasn't a victim, that he'd promised her money, gifts, a better life. His father stood abruptly, yelling that she was lying. Ethan slid a final document across the table, proof of a hotel room reservation under his father's name only 2 weeks earlier. Silence crashed over the room. Ariana stared at the paper, then at the man who had sworn he would protect her. Her voice broke into a jagged whisper as she realized neither of them could save her now. Ethan leaned back in his chair. He said this was only the beginning. He said everything they had done, every lie, every secret, every manipulation, was about to come out. And with that, the panic in the room transformed into pure, escalating chaos. The morning after the disastrous dinner, Ariana woke to a knock on her door and found a formal letter slipped beneath it. She unfolded it with shaking hands. It was a legal notice from Ethan's mother's attorney, outlining potential claims of fraud, harassment, and intentional emotional distress. Ariana's breath caught as she read the words, each sentence tightening around her like a rope. She threw the papers across the room and grabbed her phone, calling Ethan over and over. He didn't pick up. By midday, her panic had grown claws. She opened her laptop and began typing a long, furious post on a new blog she created, painting Ethan as controlling, abusive, manipulative, every accusation she could think of. She published it instantly, hopping to regain some control, hopping to ruin him before he ruined her. But within hours, everything backfired. The blog was flagged, screenshots were saved, and Ethan's mother's attorney added a new legal claim: defamation. Ariana tried to delete the blog, but it was too late. Every one of her lies had already been archived. Meanwhile, Ethan sat with the attorney reviewing the mountain of evidence he had collected. Text messages, recorded calls, location data, financial transfers showing that his father had funneled over $73,000 to Ariana in less than a year. Each transaction was labeled with vague descriptions: consulting, assistance, personal reimbursement, transparent attempts to disguise the affair. As the attorney flipped through the pages, she shook her head in disbelief. Ethan explained that Ariana and his father had called their entire scheme Operation Upgrade, a phrase Ariana herself had bragged about in several messages, describing the plan to secure financial support from his father while keeping Ethan emotionally invested. When confronted, his father tried to justify the payments as charity, claiming Ariana had been in a difficult financial situation. But the numbers told another story. So did the screenshots of Ariana, discussing how she could play both men for maximum gain. As the attorney prepared the next round of legal filings, Ethan's phone buzzed with a long string of messages from Ariana. At first, she begged him to talk. Then she accused him of ruining her life. Then she threatened to expose everything unless he backed off. Ethan didn't respond. Instead, he forwarded the messages to the attorney, adding them to the growing list of harassment evidence. Later that evening, Ariana showed up at his workplace, pounding on the glass door and shouting for him to come outside. Security escorted her away before Ethan even left his desk. Across town, his father was falling apart as well. Rumors had begun circulating around his workplace about inappropriate conduct and misappropriation of funds. People started whispering, digging, asking questions. The truth was beginning to seep out from every crack. Ariana, seeing her options shrinking by the hour, tried to shift blame onto Ethan's father, saying he had manipulated her, pressured her, and dragged her into a mess she never wanted. But Ethan had already turned over everything, including Ariana's own words, written proudly and without remorse, about how she planned to level up her life through the affair. The retaliation had started. The legal noose tightened. And for Ariana and his father, the consequences were only just beginning. The first sign that things were spiraling beyond repair came 3 days after the attorney sent out the initial filings. Ethan's father received a notice from his company's internal compliance division, requesting immediate documentation regarding several suspicious transfers. He tried to dismiss it as a misunderstanding, but the tone of the letter made it clear this was only the beginning. He spent the entire evening packing through the house, snapping at anyone who spoke to him, convinced someone had been feeding information to the board. Ethan said nothing. He didn't need to. The evidence was already in motion. Ethan's father woke to frantic pounding on the front door just after sunrise. 2 officers stood on the porch, expressionless, holding a warrant. His mother watched from the stairs as they escorted him out, her hand covering her mouth as if trying to physically hold in the sound of her heartbreak. Ethan didn't speak. He simply stood behind her, steadying her shoulder while she trembled. The arrest happened so quickly that his father barely had time to grab his coat. Neighbors stared from their windows as he was placed into the back of the patrol car. The humiliation was immediate and irreversible. The sentencing hearing for Ethan's father took place on a cold Monday morning. He shuffled into the courtroom in a wrinkled suit, looking smaller than Ethan had ever seen him. The prosecution presented months of financial records, traced transactions, and evidence of his role in shielding Jacob's embezzlement. When the judge read the verdict, guilty on multiple counts, his father closed his eyes, shoulders collapsing inward. He was handed a prison sentence, along with a massive restitution order that would drain whatever was left of his savings. Ethan's mother sat silently, tears slipping down her cheeks, mourning not the man who stood before the court, but the man she had once believed he was. Ethan stood outside his mother's new home, watching her water the garden she had planted only weeks earlier. The sunlight touched her face gently, softening lines carved by months of pain. For the first time in a long time, she looked at peace. He realized then that everything he had endured, the betrayal, the chaos, the legal storm, had finally led them both to a place where healing was possible. People in town still whispered about the scandal, but their opinions no longer had weight. The truth had been exposed, justice had taken its course, and the people who had manipulated, lied, and deceived had paid the price for their choices. Ethan never celebrated their downfall. He felt no triumph, no satisfaction in their ruin. He simply felt free. He spent more time with friends, rebuilt his confidence, and nurtured the new relationship that had quietly become a bright spot in his life. When he reflected on everything, he understood something important. He had never sought revenge. He had only refused to protect the people who had torn his family apart. They had written their own ending. And now, Ethan was finally able to write his own beginning.